Chiefs Kingdom, welcome into the latest episode of the AP Film Room on the Arrowhead Pride YouTube page. We are, ankles deep, would you say? Ankle deep into the draft process, draft season. Combine workouts starting out Thursday afternoon. Probably the day you'll be watching this. This is the day it'll be coming out. But we're recording this Wednesday night, as we kind of, we're getting all our prospect, previews out for the combine. I got my Edge one out today. You guys will have stuff out. It's a great time to be, talking drafts. So that's what we're doing here. I'm Ron Kopp Jr., the lead analyst at arrowheadpride.com. With me, as always, on this show, Caleb James at CJ Scoobs on Twitter, film analyst at the site, and also Nate Christensen at NateCH32 on Twitter. Boys, we are talking draft today. We are back. We talked offensive tackles last week. But we're sticking on offense at least. But, we're going to the more exciting positions. I think today, it's a little more fun to talk the wide receiver spot. So, Nate, I'll start with you. How are you feeling today? And, I don't know, how are you getting into the draft? Are you feeling more comfortable with the prospect class?
Yeah, I guess to kind of bring it up about receivers as a whole, similar to the offensive tackle, but a little bit better. I wouldn't say it's one of the better receiver classes we've had, especially, compared to what it's been the last 3 or 4 years, where it seems like every year there's 20 receivers that probably have top 100 grades. Working through the class now, and I still have a long way to go. I'm not quite there. I would probably say there's around 8 to 9 receivers, which isn't bad. It's not a bad class. It's just not full of the blue chip talent. I think I said to you guys, or I said to maybe my brother, everyone's kind of getting pushed up probably one round too often just because of scarcity at wide receiver. So the blue chip players that go in the first round, I think would be better in the second round, and then kind of vice versa. But overall, I think the class is decent. There's certainly options. There's been way worse years than this. So I think if the Chiefs want to address wide receiver, they'd have plenty of options.
Well, one thing about this class is you got a lot of smaller, a lot of fast, maybe slot types, kind of the smaller build receivers.
Mm-hmm.
That really does make up a big chunk of this class. And that's why maybe you'll kind of see today that, it seems like a lot of us picked out, maybe the bigger receivers, maybe some of the guys that do have some size in this class. Caleb, how are you feeling about the receiver class? Would you agree with kind of what Nate just said?
Yeah, I agree. I think there's some good players, but I don't think it's the deepest class we've ever seen before. But there's, it's the modern NFL. There's always going to be a need for wide receivers, and teams will do whatever it takes to get a guy who they think can be their explosive playmaker. This class has a lot of explosion. I think that is one thing that it does have. There's a lot of guys who teams think they can turn into their big play threat. But yeah, overall, I just think that the way teams are starting to value wide receivers is changing around the league, and that's just forcing all these guys to get drafted, maybe a little bit out of position as compared to, where maybe they would be in the past.
Well, we got receivers at the top of the class, which we talk about maybe the depth of the class not being that good. I don't think the top of the class is very good either, right? Quentin Johnson, a lot of people's wide receiver one from TCU. You also have Jordan Addison, the USC receiver, Jackson Smith and Jigba. Also, obviously, someone that's a huge pick and could be the first receiver off the board. A guy like Zay Flowers from Boston College is someone I like. I would have brought him on here. That's one of the shorter receivers I love. There's just no film of him, apparently. Just doesn't exist. So we're talking receivers. And one of the top guys that I did not name is the guy you're going to look at for us, Caleb, to start this out. And it is Jalin Hyatt, the Tennessee wide receiver. A guy that people are saying, round one, right? After an explosive year last year. For some reason, I feel like I'm questioning myself on this, but he won the Biletnikoff fight last year, right? I mean, that is what happened, correct?
I'll look it up. It was either he or Quentin Johnston. I'll look it up real quick.
I'm pretty sure Jalin Hyatt did because, Tennessee was just so prolific. But anyway, Caleb, you got to break down kind of what we need to know about Jalin Hyatt. Obviously, someone that could be, a potential Chiefs pick. The Chiefs love their speed. And we'll debate kind of whether we like that or not. But go ahead and tell us a little bit about Jalin Hyatt.
Well, you mentioned that speed, and you can see on this play they kind of get in that stack, and they line him up. Obviously, he's going to catch the ball, runs a long ways, and scores against Alabama. Let me run it back a little bit, though, as we see him starting to run in, and it's kind of being cut off just a little bit, but you can see in the bottom of the corner, this is something Tennessee did a lot. I'm sure Ron will get into this here in a second, as well. They run this stack where they get him lined up in the back there. That's more or less to help him create space because he accelerates pretty quickly out of that. You see that, right? He's a big-time accelerator. He doesn't necessarily do as good when he's got, guy just head up on him who might try to press him. But the reason that stack is so effective right there is because it gives him like an instant running start where he doesn't really have to get through anybody. He just finds the space in the defense here. He does a good job. I mean, he catches the ball. I've seen some people riding him off saying it's just a scheme thing. I think Andy Reid is pretty good at scheming his guys ways to get open also. So that's something I'd keep in mind. And really, if we think the Chiefs are, potentially moving on from McCole Hardman, he could be a guy that can maybe come in and fill that role regardless of them having Kadarius Toney and Sky Moore. Here he comes in. He's just running a slant here. He finds the space. He's more than just a deep ball guy. If you give him a little bit of space off the snap, he is going to do a good job of being able to beat you. Lined up there, they bring the motion man over. The DBs kind of see the motion. Tennessee did a really good job of using motion this year, I think, to get their guys open. But yeah, I mean, he just finds a lot of space. It's a real easy completion. Not exactly a ton of juice after the catch, though. He's going to catch it, and he's fast, and he can score. Not really a big-time tackle breaker, but this is a nice play versus Florida here. Catches it, brings it in. This play, he doesn't catch it, but I do like he's got a little bit of juice when it comes to, starting and stopping his feet. You can see when we get back around onto it that he comes out and we see he's going to be lined up down on the slot there. They got the ball on the goal line. He's going to be the second receiver there. And he hesitates, and he gets past the cornerback. The cornerback's stepping up to play him. He gets through there. I thought that was nice just because he's showing off some of the start and stop ability. Quarterback doesn't go his way. He's open. I think maybe that could be, that might be a pass that Patrick Mahomes would be something in there. There's guys that run good routes, and the quarterback's not always going to throw him the ball. I think sometimes when evaluating receivers, tight ends, you got to kind of look at that stuff also because those guys aren't, their quarterbacks aren't always going to make the read there. And then just talking about the speed again, he's fast now. He's going to blow past you. If you give him a little bit or you don't try to do something to deliberately have your safety over the top, he can run past you, especially if you have a slower corner on him like he does here. I mean, there's nothing really complicated about what Tennessee's doing here. They just said we're going to get a favorable matchup where we can get our guy burning over the top, and he's going to beat the safety in coverage too. Great pass, great hook up there. And the Chiefs didn't really have too many deep long balls. They had some explosive plays. They, outside of having the MVS plays, some of those shots, they really didn't have any of the big bombs that we kind of gotten used to in the last couple of years with Tyreek, and sometimes with McCole. And this was just, they're giving him space. Pitt's respecting, the speed. So he just comes back. I think this is an aspect to his game that he's going to have to upgrade a little bit. I don't think he's necessarily the strongest at the point of, contact. I think he can do a little bit better. He's dropped some passes like this before, but really if he wants to be a complete player in the NFL and he starts having, plays where he goes deep like that, eventually they're going to, teams are going to start playing him. He's got to keep him honest. He's going to have to catch the ball underneath a few times a game. So they're not just playing for the deep ball. So he's got to kind of develop himself in that aspect also. But overall, I don't think he's a first-round pick. I wouldn't draft him in the first round if I were the Chiefs. I think he's a second-round pick. But with that speed and explosion, those are the kind of things that teams are drawn to. That's the kind of things that I think teams will have him, go shooting up the boards on draft day or just because of things like that.
Real quick, Nate, I want your take on
yeah.
Do you agree with that?
So I have two kind of questions, and I'll kind of comment on them. First is how many receivers in the NFL so I'll just say Hyatt to me is just a straight vertical guy. I think he's exceptionally valuable on vertical tree, but I don't think he provides much else to an offense. How many receivers in the NFL really are more than a wide receiver 3 or 4 who run just vertical routes? It's not the list is really short. I was trying to think of it in a car today. I was it's maybe MVS, Jalen Guyton when he was playing. The list is really small.
Yes.
And my second question is, and I know they're different body types, why isn't Jalen Hyatt just Jalen Reagor? Like, I feel like I get the same thing because, like, okay, the thing about like college offenses, there's so much space in college based off the way defenses play and the sidelines that's just not going to be there in the NFL. So my concern with Hyatt is he's going to come out, and I made this like, remember when McCole Hardman in 2019 came out and he was like super explosive. Like he had that like 80-yard touchdown against the Ravens, and like the first like half that year, like, oh man, like look at McCole Hardman. But he didn't really develop much beyond that because he didn't have much else besides the vertical tree and like the shot or like the design plays. That's my worry with Jalen Hyatt, is that someone will draft him, whether it's the Chiefs or not, like with like a way too high of a pick. And then like they realize, oh crap, this guy only runs vertical routes. That might work for a little bit, but once teams get tape, it's going to be taken away. What's Jalen Hyatt's counterpunch? I don't think he has one. So it's kind of one of those things for me, is like, how valuable is a guy who only runs vertical routes, even if he runs them very, very well, which I acknowledge. Like I think he is a very good vertical route runner, and you cannot give him space. But if that's all he is, how can you play beyond like 30% of the snaps in the NFL? Like, let's just be honest, like McCole Hardman's snap count was what, 40% most of the years he was in Kansas City. Right. I ask you guys, what do you think about that?
Yeah, no, it's a very good point. But the thing is, I would emphasize is that you're right. The deep route running, the vertical speed, it's not just good. It's not just great. It is elite. I mean, yeah, you do have to give him the benefit of the doubt on that. And we've seen players in NFL history, make a living out of that, right? I mean, hey, one guy that I see, which I don't want to go all the way there, but I do see a little Deshaun Jackson in the way his route running and his deep separation ability. Deshaun Jackson was just probably a playmaker in space, just in general, punt returner, all that in open space. But all that to say is a Will Fuller type. He finds success in the right offense. You may not want him, or you may not have him be your primary, like he's going to be your number one target, and maybe your offense isn't that good if he's your number one target. And that's where you get your guys' round 1, round 2 debate gets into here, right? Because if he's a round 2 pick, maybe you guys feel a lot better, and it's like, you snag him all day. But I still think, though, with that, having that elite trait, I do think, especially in this class, too, I just feel like you do take that right. I just feel like there is something to, like, I know what he's going to do, and I feel like he's going to do it really well. And in this explosive, this passing attack NFL offenses today, man, I will say, like, he's going to find a good role.
The one thing about Hyatt is he has probably the best individual trait that any receiver has in the class. Like, if you said, like, take every receiver's best trait, Hyatt's vertical speed is above everyone else. What do you think about that, Caleb?
I agree with that from what I've seen. A lot of it, and there's, I wanted to do another guy. I just couldn't find any film for him. I like Tyler Scott from Cincinnati, but yeah, I mean, Hyatt's completely electric. But yeah, his teammate, though, Cedric Tillman, he's a dog too. So we need to check this out.
Well, I was going to say, though, because you were going to check out Tyler Scott, which is a hot name and someone that's going to blow up the combine, might honestly, get close to that record at the NFL combine. He is that fast. Just kind of funny. Tyler Scott's kind of just a day 2 Jalen Hyatt, and might be, the better value, right? And having that deep threat, we're just talking about. It may not be the same level of that deep separation speed threat, but man, he is very fast. But you're right. Cedric Tillman is the other Tennessee receiver that's in the draft, the more slept on receiver after, the 2021 season or 2021 season. After that, he was looked at as one of the best receiver prospects in the 2023 draft. And I'm just going to let a little, roll of clips go. But, this first set of clips you'll kind of see, and I do have him marked, so make sure you check out the red circle where he is. You're just going to see strong. He's an X receiver, right? And I guess I'll start with this because Caleb kind of hinted at it. He's a typical X receiver, plays on the line of scrimmage. Well, in the Tennessee offense, how Hyatt was getting open a lot of times was they get in those stack formations, spread them out really wide, and Tillman would be that guy on the line of scrimmage with Hyatt behind him, and Tillman would be creating that separation by taking on the press. And, and obviously being that first route out in space to give Hyatt that clean release, that was a lot of, and you'll see it here. Actually, he's the other receiver, he's usually the top receiver in this formation. But let me just go back, because what I do think, being that traditional X receiver, the kind of a power receiver, you see those strong hands in route running, right? He creates separation at the top of his route break here, with a little shove, in between 5 yards, gets an open route at the sticks. You'll see it throughout his route running, and it does make him, again, an X, but, he's not just this like hulking guy. He's a pretty decently sized guy. He's not a very, tall, very lanky, dude, so it doesn't make him very, he's not super like long strides, right? He can, chop down pretty quick. He can, break down pretty quick. He doesn't have the greatest breakdown on his route breaks, I will say, on sit routes, curl routes. He will have to stutter his feet quite a bit to get to a stop. But you see on that last play, and I'll rewind it back, but he does have some pretty good yards after the catch ability, breaking routes, kind of breaking arm tackles. He's strong enough to do that. You'll see it on this next play too. He's going to run a slant. But, just, again, good footwork off the line, able to beat press. For the most part, it's not the cleanest, press beating, I will say. But again, just strong hands, and that helps a lot of it. He's not going to be, a guy that beats you necessarily with great moves off the line, but just, again, hands. And here you see more yak ability, just making a guy miss in space. He can do a little bit of everything. And so that's where he's an intriguing Chiefs receiver, right? Because Chiefs receivers need to be able to do a little bit of everything. You need to be able to line up as the isolated receiver on one side to be the X receiver. You also need to be able to block, right? Here's a couple good blocking reps of him. Let me play it back so you can see where he circled that up there at the top. He's big enough to handle kind of these moments where he does have to lock up somebody and really block up. You'll see another one here where he kind of has to block off the edge and do just enough, right? Good leverage here, finishes out the play, finishes the block. That's what he's going to be able to do for the Chiefs offense. He's not just this, he's not just, again, like a big receiver that, can't, run routes and create separation. He's not going to be the best at that. But again, he's a guy that can have these tough catches too. You see these last two plays are just catches. He's either getting hit or going to the ground, making a tough catch. Both of those go in. Something I didn't mention, which I absolutely need to, is this is his 2021 tape. This is actually, him in the 2021 season playing Alabama. And it's because he, 2022, which we're showing his vertical speed here on these last few snaps, but the 2022 season was kind of a weird year for him. He could have went to the draft last year, decided to stay back in school, wanted to play at Tennessee. What was definitely a guy that really took pride in that. But then kind of as the season went on, he had a foot injury that he really had to play through, and it really just limited how much he could do this season. And so that's why a lot of times you are seeing his best games happening in 2021. You're seeing his best tape. This guy put up over 350 yards combined against Alabama and Georgia in 2021, about 3 touchdowns. He was someone, and I just showed you all the tape against it. That was the Georgia and Alabama tape from last year. And I need to back up and show this vertical speed again because I didn't talk about it, but he can get going, man. When he gets some momentum down with his speed, man, he can get going down the field. He can create separation, and then you see him finish it off with the contested catch. Now this one, a little more of a, he kind of cheats here. The corner's turned around and then he gets the advantage. But you still see that long speed. Those strides come in, and all of a sudden he's burning the guy, right? So I do think you do have that vertical speed with him as well as being, again, that X receiver that can win, quickly and kind of have tough catches. And then here you see an out and up that he runs beautifully and creates separation. Should have been a touchdown against the Pitt Panthers. This was in 2022. But all that to say is yeah, Cedric Tillman is definitely a guy that I'm wanting the Chiefs to at least think about in the day 2 range. I think that's where he's going to go. But he should test well at the combine. He was a high recruit, and he's going to be a good athlete at the combine. Again, a foot injury really held him back this year. So that's a guy I'm looking forward to combine this weekend and I'm excited about. Any thoughts on Tillman or Nate? Nate, let's just get into your guy. We really need Nate to go off on his guy here. So introduce us to him.
Yeah. As I was watching receivers a couple of weeks ago, kind of getting some preliminary work, I was kind of like, okay, I was like, all right, this guy's fine. Like, I don't love him or anything like that. But then I was kind of looking through my library and I saw this guy named Jonathan Mingo, and I looked up, I was like, all right, maybe he's intriguing. Ole Miss receiver. I was not expecting anything, and I was blown away. I really was. I thought his tape was just excellent. He's just kind of gives some measurements. He was a senior, so we have some. 6'1" 3/8 inch, 226 pounds, 32-inch arms, 76 3/4 inch wingspan. I looked it up because I've kind of had this comp in mind. AJ Brown, 6'1", 226 pounds, 8-inch wingspan, and 33-inch arms. So a little bit different body types, and AJ Brown was a better prospect. Like, let's make that clear. But like, I was kind of, when I saw that in the number 1 and like kind of their builds, it's like they're kind of similar builds. And the thing I love about Mingo is he's really like a complete like X receiver. even if he's like a smaller type. So I have some clips here I will show. Let's start with this one right here. Make sure that's fun. Yes. Okay. So up top, he's going to be running a post route up top versus corner. It's 1-on-1. I believe this is like quarters coverage. To me, this is like this was one of the first plays that showed out. He's just going to burn this guy. Just get right on top of him and get over the top of him, showing that like elite, like very good vertical speed. There's been questions about his vertical speed. I don't really get it. Like, I think he's fine. I don't think he's like Jalen Hyatt, but I think he definitely has enough for a bigger kind of physical wide receiver. 105. Let me get that here. Okay, so it was the LSU. Sorry, it was the LSU game that really sold me on Jonathan Mingo because he showed everything from blocking and route running that I needed to see. So this rep is like my favorite one. He's going to be this X receiver here on the bottom. It's press, it's man to man, and like just because of college offenses, you just don't have to beat press often. So when I see it, it's something that I just love. So he's going to take like an outside release, feign inside. He's stacked this corner. He's explosive enough. He is on top of this corner. Quarterback kind of underthrows the ball a little bit. Watch him kind of bring it in over the shoulders, tough to the ground, tough like physical catch. That is not an easy catch at all. In contested catch situation, you have to catch it over the shoulder to the ground. How many guys can like really do that? It's not a very common thing. But the thing I love the most about Mingo is his blocking ability. Like, and that sounds weird for a receiver, but LSU or Ole Miss would trust him to basically play as like an F tight end off the ball, and he would crack linebackers. He'd crack defensive ends. He'd work the second level. The dude blocks so well, and like it's an underrated trait. But when you're kind of that X receiver, you do have to block at times. Teams like to condense their formations and have guys block. Like I know Green Bay, for example, is an offense that does that, and Mingo was trusted to block anyone. They had him block against bigger defensive ends, guys in space. So he was able to execute everything. And to kind of cap off this LSU game, which I thought was great tape. Like, I would have given a great tape. He's going to run a double move up top and just kind of watching his ability to kind of set the double move vertically. He's going to get free release from the slot, but gets off the line of scrimmage, kind of stems up the field, works back inside, and explodes right back out. And, the route might not be like elite or anything like that, but the explosiveness through his feet, the ability to kind of set up like a double move like that. This is where like I would have questions like, why do people like question his vertical speed? Like, he is on top of this. This should be a touchdown. The quarterback gives a terrible throw. But overall, kind of about Mingo, like the things I love is I think he's an X receiver. Like, I think he's a true X receiver, but he also showed ability in the slot. You can use him in the run game. I've told you guys, I think that the Ole Miss offense just did no favors at all because they had to, just based off like their quarterback talent and their scheme, he wasn't allowed to really be himself. I guess like he wasn't allowed to run like a real route tree. But anytime you saw him really get a design target, it worked. He's strong, he's physical, he's explosive, he can be press, he can block. That's I'm serious. Like, why is that not like a round one wide receiver? Is it like a production thing? Like he'll have to prove me right at the combine, because if he comes out and has an underwhelming combine, I'll have to probably walk back some stuff. But like, I actually think he's gonna test well. And I think when he does, like, people are suddenly back. Oh, I go back and look at his tape, like, oh man, he kind of has every trait you need out of a wide receiver. So I love John Mingo. I will go to bat for that guy every day. I hope he's watching this.
Well, I made a little bit of I had a reaction when you made the AJ Brown comparison, and it's not because it wasn't a good comparison.
Brown is a better college player. Let's make that clear.
Well, I just wanted to say that someone else reminded me of AJ Brown, so I was just like, dang it.
Oh.
But Caleb James, we need to move on and talk about your second receiver, who is a guy that you are a big fan of. Again, another X-type receiver, I think. I think we can all agree to that, but let's go ahead and talk about your boy.
Yep, and while I'm pulling the quick up here real quick, maybe Nate and I are crazy, but I found my tweet about Jonathan Mingo. I tweeted on 128. I said, I think Jonathan Mingo has some Sammy Watkins vibes to his game.
That's not a bad comp.
Oh, maybe we're crazy. I don't know. But
it's honestly not bad, because they're both kind of like the smaller, like stout X receivers that have like the vertical pop. Sammy was a better athlete in his prime, but I could see it.
All right. You got a guy here. I like him a lot. Played his college football at Iowa State. Xavier Hutchinson, 6'3". I think he would add a different dynamic to the Chiefs that they don't really have. But I like about this play here, in my shadow box on him kind of gets in the way a little bit. But you see, I like this inside release on the corner. And he's a bigger receiver, too. He's like 6'3", probably around 210 pounds. But he's making that route look pretty easy on that slant there. That is Brock Purdy throwing him passes. We all know how much Nate loves Brock Purdy. But we're coming through, and I just thought I like his ability to separate there. He's got some wiggle to his hips that he's able to create that little extra bit with that helps him go score on that guy. And really, yeah, he can really do a little bit of everything. They used him in quite a few different things. He runs slants well. He runs those underneath routes well. They used him in a lot of drag routes, but he can get free. He just shakes him. Easy touchdown. He's decently fast for being kind of a bigger receiver. Where I've enjoyed watching him play, and let's see where this one is. Yeah, he's got some shiftiness also. You see kind of stop and go a little bit right there. He's got that cornerback beat, and it's a terrible pass from Brock Purdy. It should have been a touchdown. He'll take the PI just because the DB's so bad. But really, for being a bigger guy, I like the way he's under control into that. You can see how he's getting into, he's coming out of his stance. He explodes out. He's going to get into the break and then back out real quick, and if it's a good pass, he's going to score a touchdown or at least get in the red zone. You take a look, and really he's almost in a position to try to come back and get this ball, and this is what I'm going to get into here in a second. His catch radius is giant. He makes some catches where the pass just really doesn't look like it should be there. He's trying to always find a way where it's at, and this is kind of an example of that. Nothing real difficult about the scheme on this play. We're going to get him in the end zone. He's got a much bigger body than this defensive back that is trying to cover him. And this is something the Chiefs, they haven't had a bigger receiver. It's not really necessarily been that important, but I think, as some of these teams are starting to get these taller receivers, I've got, Mike Williams syndrome. I want to see our guys going up and trying to grab the ball out of the air every once in a while, kind of like how T. Higgins did to them in the AFC Championship game. But yeah, and then, just this one here, he's on the underneath route out there, and he just has to go out and stretch out and get it. I mentioned the catch radius. He does going to do a pretty good job here, just headed out on this one. The DB is going to be up in his grill. He shakes free, and then he stretches out just far enough to get in there. So he really provides a skill set that I don't think the Chiefs currently have at wide receiver. He's got a bigger body, and I think that, he could be a guy that could come in and replace Juju Smith-Schuster if they do decide to move on. I don't really think he'd be an explosive receiver in the NFL. I think he's more of, a mid-range passing game, possession type guy, but I think he would have that plus value in the red zone to where if they say, hey, double on Kelsey, you get a one-on-one and let him go up and make an athletic kind of play. I think he's your guy to do that.
Yeah, let's talk about that real quick, because I do think it's really interesting. We all talk, I think, about that as like, the Chiefs have never really had that true X, that true, go up and get it kind of guy. But have they ever, used it in the offense? Have they ever truly valued it in the offense? Is it something that they don't want to do, or is it something that they just haven't done because they haven't had the guy to really unlock that part of it? That's where, I really do think Andy Reid does value having receivers that can do everything. So that's where it's so interesting, in the draft process is we want to find these bigger size guys. I'm with you. I want to find these bigger body, even if it's a Jonathan Mingo, that's maybe not the biggest bodied guy, but we need to find these guys that can be bigger bodied and do everything else. Right. That's and there's some flashes there from Hutchinson. I mean, you saw, that speed there. I wasn't expecting to see that speed. But are there any thoughts on kind of that? I mean, how important is it for them to have kind of maybe a true X receiver?
I've always thought it was overrated,
Right.
just because Andy Reid and Brett, like if you listen to any Andy Reid Brett Veach interview, they mention like positionless wide receivers all the time.
Right.
And like, it's just hard for those bigger, there's nothing wrong with them. I like watching those receivers. It's just hard for them to be like schematically versatile. So that's why I don't think you ever see it, because like Sammy Watkins, to bring him back, like he could play in the slot, he could play X, like he could play in so many different spots, which is why the Chiefs had to pay him like a lot because of kind of his talent, that like they needed that part in the offense. So, I mean, I would love a big receiver. I don't know if that's a utility that Andy Reid really cares about.
Well, exactly. But that's where, what you're saying is we're trying to find these guys that maybe can do, that can line up isolated as the X that Kelsey does sometimes, right? But then can also be in the slot, can also, go in motion and do certain other things. So, yeah. And again, I say all that to say, Hutchinson, I was kind of expecting maybe to see just a bigger, kind of, again, and he is more of a possession receiver, like you mentioned, Caleb, but a little more speed than maybe I was expecting. So that's good to see. As a Big 12 kind of maybe a more local prospect. My other guy, again, I kind of hinted at it, but I see some shades of AJ Brown in this guy too. A smaller AJ Brown. I guess you kind of mentioned that too, but Kayshon Boutte, the LSU wide receiver, someone that has a very interesting background coming into the draft, as my friend Nate has informed me. I was not as aware, but and anyone else interested, you can go look it up yourselves, but. Just in general, though, LSU's program has been kind of a weird, kind of a wacky program the last couple of years. Kayshon Boutte is someone that, really had a great season with them in 2021. The last year, before Brian Kelly comes in this past year, obviously the new coach. So he's kind of in between regimes. It's kind of a weird spot for Boutte to be in. And I think that does maybe impact his, kind of how he's thought of in the draft community, because I think he's a much better player maybe than he's getting looked at right now. But one thing I want to point out as I get into this first game, this is against UCLA, week 1 of 2021, meaning this was the first game of his true sophomore season after not really playing, much of not true sophomore season. True sophomore season. True sophomore season after not really playing as a freshman. So this is his first real collegiate game. And you're just going to see just some things that I think are kind of almost like a little savvy, a little veteran savvy, and why it reminds me of AJ Brown a little bit. First of all, you're seeing just yak on these kind of first plays. He just kind of has a good feel. He's not the fastest guy. He's not the most, he's not the quickest, he's not going to be super electric, in a phone booth, breaking a guy down and getting past him. But he's just he's slippery, kind of, he's kind of, he's strong. He has a good contact balance, so he doesn't go down. Here's another great play. Again, week 1, winning the game for his team pretty much. This was like the, one of the last plays of the game. And then you'll see here some route separation in the red zone. Just some route running that is kind of interesting to me. Not the typical way to run these back shoulder fades, but I think that's him kind of being a playmaker, right? Creating the separation. You'll see again just the hand fighting and route running. Kind of getting the hands off him here. This one he was helped by the ref, but just getting the hands off as he gets into the break right here, right? That's just kind of subtle stuff that, again, as a true sophomore, this first game, playing for LSU, I just think it's kind of impressive to see him kind of already doing some of this stuff. This is a great route here, selling the inside, and coming back out and getting to the sideline, first down here. I just was impressed with what he was doing. And it did remind me again of a smaller AJ Brown, someone that you can play in the slot, play on the outside. He's going to be able to get quick separation. You can also, you can give him the ball quickly. He can get some yards, some tough yards right after the catch. Here's though some examples of him doing well in the scramble drill, which I like, which again, and I'm going to keep saying it, this is his first game of his true sophomore season, already looking, pretty instinctual with the scramble drill. Sees his quarterback, the timing right, the timing's already gone through. I thought I had the end zone angle on that, but anyway, here's another scramble drill play where, play is broken down, right? He needs to do something, spins out of it, finds a way to create separation downfield, and then makes an unreal catch down the field. You'll see the end zone angle of this one. Really great catch here, but you'll show last, because these are all games from 2021. These two games at least, but in the Alabama game this past season, I actually saw a few spurts, and I'm not going to say they're very impressive vertical speed, but I just wanted to show it because I do think he has something here where he can get going down the field. You see him in the right slot here. He has some route tempo, some route pacing to him. Again, where that savviness comes in. But man, I'm telling you, I see some deep speed from him when he wants to turn on that last gear, that final gear, and really get into a gear where he's getting down the field quickly. So yeah, Kayshon Boutte, someone I was kind of excited about after watching him. Someone that again had a kind of a weird college career, and is why maybe he's not as big of a name as he was this last in the last offseason. But I don't know, man. I think I could see how he fits in the Chiefs offense. You kind of mentioned maybe a Juju Smith-Schuster replacement. I think he can do some of the same things as Juju in that way as well. So yeah, there's Kayshon Boutte.
If you're not breaking the law, it's no big deal.
All right. Well, we're just gonna leave it there. Nate, let's finish it off with another. Well, actually, I shouldn't say another a speed guy because we've really been talking about a lot of X guys on this show today since Jalin Hyatt. But you have maybe someone that can offer a little more.
Yeah, no, kind of another receiver I really liked. Definitely way different type than we've been watching is Jaden Reed out of Michigan State. 5'10", 3/4 inches, 191 pounds. So he's definitely on the smaller side. 2022, his receiving yards went down by about 400 yards, 5 less touchdowns. So I think he's kind of flown under the radar because I just really enjoyed watching his film. I don't think he has like anything special, but I just think he's a really polished, good wide receiver. I kind of let the clips play out. To me, he's kind of just a prototypical slot receiver in the NFL. He did kind of like run some nice routes from the outside. I do question his vertical speed. I don't think he's a burner by any means at all. I bet he's probably in like the 4.5 range. So you're not gonna see him really get over the top. But I like this play. Like he's on the outside here. He's just gonna run a basic dig route. It's a good throw by the quarterback, but I kind of like him being able to kind of sit in a window, kind of present himself, kind of open, be able to catch and kind of turn up field, create some after the catch. He has a really good kind of recognition of like leverages and zone coverage and kind of where like you can just, I guess the way to say it is like you can just tell he's a really well coached receiver. He has a good understanding of like if I have to attack this guy's blind spot, this is where I go. If I'm getting zone coverage and I'm running like an underneath route, like right here, I'm going to sit down, present myself as available for the quarterback. And to kind of show the last clips here, this is the thing that really sold me on him, his film, because I was saying like I had my notes like, is he a guy that can win really down the field? Up top, this is overtime. I believe this was 3rd and 12 or 2nd and 12 against Wisconsin. He's going to be isolated and he's just going to run a double move right to the pylon, right, a fade route. And like the double move's not great. The DB, kind of bites towards it, but DB's actually in good position here. But he's able to win like a slot fade kind of over the shoulder. I do have the end zone view here. And he's not a guy that's going to go up and get the ball, right? He's 5'10". He's not like overly explosive, but the body control, he has really strong hands for the most part. I don't remember seeing a drop with him on film. And I think he's just kind of going underrated overall. Like, yeah, I definitely don't think he's like a dynamic athlete. I don't think he's going to go out and blow up the combine this week. I guess he's probably like a, 70th percentile athlete. But in terms of like, he just has solid receiver traits. I think he's the guy that comes in day one and helps a passing offense. To be honest, I don't know if he has a great utility in Kansas City, just because I think Sky Moore and Kadarius Toney kind of take his role. But I would say like if Jayden Reed's there in round 4 because he maybe didn't test great or there's questions about his production last year, I would love having Jayden Reed on this team because I think he's someone that will go like a little bit lower than people expect, but that's someone I think that can really contribute like instantly to a passing offense.
All right, well, let me ask this then, and I'll throw. Well, let me ask Caleb, I guess. But talking through this receiver group, we just talked through 6 guys. If you had to say, are you going early or later in the draft? If you do want to add to this, what we know as the Chiefs receiving core, we don't know if they're going to add in free agency. We don't know if they're going to re-sign whoever. Right now, as you stand, would you rather them try to take a swing on a round 1, round 2, one of their top 2 picks, or kind of wait on someone? What do you think, Caleb?
I just think there's going to be enough guys in this class that there's too many questions on in the first round that you maybe would want to wait until you get back into that 3rd and 4th round range or the day 3 range where you maybe start to see like your Mingos and your Hutchinsons pop up, guys who have some, they have their flaws, but you've got well-documented examples of what they can do at their peaks. I just think it's too much this year for them to be able to, risk trading up for a receiver. I've seen a lot of that. I just think there's too much uncertainty and there's too many other good positions in the draft that I think for them to want to, draft one in maybe the 1st or 2nd round. But you start to get into that 3 or 4 round range and you want to, you like a guy enough that absolutely take him there. I just think the early rounds, I'm not a big fan on taking one this year.
Okay, or Nate, same thing. What do you think?
Yeah, I would say like I don't think there's definitely a tier difference. Like I group my players by tiers. I have tiers differences, but like to be honest with you, they're still pretty close. Like I would say like my tier 2, like I have Jordan Addison as like a tier 2 receiver and Jaden Reed as a tier 3 receiver, and they're pretty close for me. Like
right.
I just don't think the value is enough at the top of the class to where I'm like desperately needing one. I really think that like 55 to like 90 range at like late second, third round range is where like the pocket is. That's where I kind of have a lot of these guys graded. So yeah, I think I'd kind of prefer to wait. I don't think there's anyone round one besides Smith and Jigba who I would like definitively take.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. Well, okay. That was a great show, fellas. Great receiver breakdown. Definitely got some good names out there. Definitely some Chiefs targets. I would say a lot of those guys are fit the profile for what the Chiefs look for. Speed, versatility, excuse me. We talked about a lot of that. So, hey, we got it done on the AP Film Room tonight. Appreciate you guys watching. Make sure you like and subscribe. And we will be back next show talking about a different position. We will debate internally which one that is. But until next time, for Caleb, for Nate, I'm Ron. Appreciate you watching. We'll catch you.